All right, guys, we are live. This is the Sherdog.com UFC 271 recap show. We are live on the Sherdog YouTube page. It is filling up. People are in the chat already talking about tonight's action. I am your usual host. My name is Keith Schillen. My normal partner, the senior editor of Sherdog.com, Mr. Ben Duffy. He's from Houston. He's in the building where it all went down, doing all that fun stuff, checking out the press conference, all that. He said he's gonna try to jump into the chat and speak with a lot of the usuals. I'm looking through. I see Mabay's out there, Tartara's out there, Tapper Snap 247 who was talking on Twitter tonight. But joining me is a man. He's doing his best. James Krause, as I kind of gave him about 2 hours notice. He's gracing us. Want to talk fights with me all the way from Ontario, Canada. He is a guy that, he's got work pretty much everywhere if you want to look for MMA work. He writes for The Scrap, Chronic MMA, MMA Empire, and MMA Sucker. He is, of course, Jason Hagholm. Jason, how you doing, my man?
I'm doing quite well, Keith. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's funny, we were just talking offline and everything was crystal clear, and then as soon as you start talking now, it starts to break up. But that's what happens when you go live. Those things tend to happen.
Yeah, you know what? It's live TV. It's how it works out sometimes. But we'll plug through.
Yeah. So we had a rematch as Israel Adesanya, the middleweight champion of the world, as they said he was making his second time around. He was starting to lap opponents. He faced off for the second time against Robert Whittaker, the man he took the title from. Really, really close fight. Not the most action-packed fight, but overall I think it was competitive, and that's what you usually look for in a matchup. I saw a whole bunch. I was looking through Twitter. I saw a whole bunch of people having their scorecards out there. So I'll start right off. How did you score this fight?
I had that 48-47 for Adesanya. I gave Whittaker around 3 and 5. But really, it was Adesanya just, having his way with the striking. The leg kicks were a big benefactor for him. And even when the fight did hit the ground, because Whittaker had, 4 or 5 takedowns in that fight overall, it was Adesanya just getting back up, no real damage. And even when Whittaker took the back and was looking for that rear naked choke, it was like Adesanya was just so cool, calm and collect, moving the hands out of the way, displacing them, and getting the fight back to the feet. And in that moment, Whittaker didn't really capitalize on it, and it was just Adesanya, getting to showcase the striking and using the point fighting style that kind of cruised him to that decision victory.
Yeah, so you had, it's funny because I also had it 48-47, but I actually scored different rounds than you did. I think you said the third and the fifth. I gave Whittaker the fifth. I think that's the round that was probably his best round, the fifth round. I gave him the fourth and the fifth. I gave Israel the first 3 rounds. I know some people were debating round 2. Obviously, you went with round 3. It's funny because watching the fight and listening to the commentary, and they were really selling how close the rounds were, but I never felt like Israel Adesanya was ever in danger. I never felt like, me watching it, I was very convinced, like, oh, this is an easy decision for Israel Adesanya. I was really, really surprised by it. Did you have that same feeling as I did, or were you, when they were reading the scorecards, were you worried that, or no, I shouldn't say worried. I know you don't not cheering for one another, but were you, guessing who's going to win? Because I felt like, oh, this is a no-brainer. Adesanya won.
Yeah, I felt like for sure Adesanya won. It was just if the judges may have seen 2 rounds or something for Whittaker, which you and I did, Keith, and some of them did, because 2 of those scorecards were 48-47 for Adesanya, or for Whittaker, I should say. But yeah, it really didn't feel like Whittaker or Adesanya was in any danger at all in the fight. Like, Whittaker had his moments, he didn't get to capitalize on them. It was just Adesanya's night, really. Just Adesanya was just a step above Whittaker in this fight, and Whittaker felt like he won the last 4 rounds, which, obviously you're in the fight one way, but yeah, it definitely was just what Adesanya does. He just uses that striking to perfection just really a solid, guy on the ground with no real danger at all when he went to the ground.
Yeah. So I'm looking at our chat. One thing I love about these post shows is everyone's really respectful, even if people have differing opinions. No one really. I don't think I've ever seen anybody insult somebody. So we always try to. Hopefully, anybody can do you keep it that way. So I'm going to throw it out there to the people listening. Our great listeners are obviously the most hardcore, staying up late. Tell me what your scorecards are. I see Mbappe. It looks like Mbappe scored. I think Mbappe did give it for Robert Whittaker. Oh, yeah, Mbappe gave it for Robert Whittaker. Tapper Snapper had it 4-1 for Izzy Adesanya. Abbas had it 4-1 for Izzy. Let's see. I'm scrolling fast, so I apologize if I miss anybody's. Mbappe is upset that someone on MMA decision scored at 50-45 for Izzy. Ben is on location, but he's also in the chat. So, Ben, if you're listening, tell us what your scorecard is. I looked at Sherdog's scorecard, and the official scores for the website I work for, Sherdog. I'm not one of the official scorers. I believe it was Jay Petrie, it was Tristan Critchfield, and Tyler Treese, I think it was the three scorers. And 2 out of 3 scored it for Robert Whittaker, which I was surprised by. I was watching this fight, and Ismail thought Robert won it. It seemed like I guess me and you are in the minority because it seemed like more people actually scoring it for Whittaker. Ezekiel King scored at 3-2 for Whittaker. I felt Robert Whittaker did something I thought was very wise. Even though I did score it for Israel Adesanya, in the first fight he was overly aggressive. He paid a price for that. Second fight he does like a 180. It maybe went too tentative. But I remember when I used to coach wrestling, and anytime I remember coaching a kid once, and obviously this is not about me. This is about Robert Whittaker, but I think the analogy will fit. There was a kid that I was coaching, and the kid he was going against was much better than him. So I said, hey, listen, let's be honest. This kid's better than you. So instead of wrestling for 6 minutes, how about we wrestle him for 1 minute? And we stall like crazy, and then we try to win 1 minute. Like, you might be better than him for 1 minute. And I kind of feel like that's what Whittaker was doing. Slow the fight down, stay all the way outside, and then just try to steal things. And basically set himself up to either, maybe one of those takedowns he catches submission, but more likely he's going to set himself up. It's going to be a extremely close fight because there's not going to be a lot of action, and maybe he wins a decision that is highly debated, like we kind of have tonight. Is that something? Like, do you understand? Do you think that's something he was thinking of, or is it just how the fight just took place?
I think obviously he had to make some adjustments because in the first fight, as you said, Keith, he got a little too aggressive, got into that firefight exchange, and that doesn't work out well against Israel Adesanya with his style, with how much kickboxing experience and how well that's transitioned over to MMA. And he obviously wanted to try to get the fight to the ground. He had those moments where he down, it was only just split seconds where he really couldn't adjust, make some decisions. And even when he had the back, like I said, Adesanya was just so cool, calm, just easily moving the hand away. And you wanted to fight, like if he fought the fight the whole 5th round, like through all 5 rounds, maybe he wins a decision here. It's not a pretty fight. It's a boring fight, but it's what you got to do. You got to make Adesanya have to work for it off the fence, get out of those tough positions. And there were just moments of that. It wasn't fully around, and Adesanya was just too good and all around and just couldn't really capitalize, Whittaker on the moments he had when he could have taken advantage and just missed those opportunities. When you miss those opportunities against someone that's that elite of a mixed martial artist, you're not going to have the decision go your way.
Yeah, and see, I actually thought that. So I thought, even though Adesanya usually the master of how a fight takes place, I actually thought he kind of went into Whittaker's game. Like there was times where Adesanya, I thought if he really turned up the pressure with his striking, he would have kind of blown him out, especially early on when he had him guessing. He was switching stances. Whittaker looked really uncomfortable. As the fight went on, he got a little bit more. It seemed like he got more comfortable in his skin. But after the first round, like I thought the commentary team was on point when he said he went back to his corner, looked like he had no confidence, that he was really frustrated. Mabe keeps talking about the size difference. He obviously had the size difference, the striking skills. He was taking out his legs. We know the injuries that Rob Whittaker has already faced, specifically with his legs. I just said everything was going wrong for him. And then it kind of became where Robert Whittaker, to do a Super Bowl weekend, a football analogy, he kind of was like a prevent defense. And Adesanya, instead of throwing the bombs down the field, he was just kind of dinking and dunking like, a team and running out the clock and kind of, hand the ball off if it was football and never really put on the gas and kind of kept a fighter that was, in my opinion, inferior kind of around. I felt like, Whittaker had the right strategy, but Adesanya kind of let him off the hook.
Yeah, you know what? He definitely in some aspects did, but you know what? Sometimes you just need to do that and dunk because he is the champion. You got to take the title from him, and Whittaker wasn't the one willing to engage in those big, drag out Rock'em Sock'em style fights that we saw in the first fight, where Whittaker got burned from it. He didn't want to play with fire again, and sometimes just being that prevent defense, as you say, Keith, worked out because he pretty much was cruising to a decision. Sure, he may have lost rounds on cards and a lot of the MMA media as well and the judges. But you know what? You got to beat the champion, and Whittaker just didn't do enough. Where he himself was too shy. At some moments he didn't capitalize. He was too hesitant, and that I think really cost him the fight, and not trying to make it that drag out fight where you just put it up against the fence, try to grind up on Israel Adesanya, and maybe he got a little too cautious, what have you. And that in all of sports, you're going to pay if you're too cautious.
Yeah, and Bass is taking it to me saying that Israel Adesanya is a low output guy, and it's I disagree with that. I think he says it's the marketing that makes him super exciting. I mean, you go back to the Gastelum fight, you tell Paulo Costa that he's not exciting. Tell Robert Whittaker in the first fight. I disagree. I just think it's Adesanya is that Patriots, the old glory Patriots offense. If you're playing them deep, they're gonna drop it down to Wes Welker for 6 yards. That's kind of he's gonna take what is there. He's gonna play the safe route like we saw in the Yoel Romero fight, and I think that's just what it was here. That's why Whittaker had moments, but I think what happens is when somebody is so superior than another guy on the feet in the striking exchanges, when it's close, we kind of like grade on a curve. Because there was rounds I saw people saying, "Oh, Whittaker won the round." I'm like, "What are you talking about? He landed like 2 jabs, like he won the round because of that." I was really, really surprised some of the rounds that people were scoring for Whittaker, and to me it goes. I always call it the John Jones Alexander Gustafsson rule. In the first fight, where no one gave Alexander Gustafsson a chance, and when the fight was close, people were giving Gustafsson rounds that John Jones won. And I always challenge people. I challenge everyone in hindsight, knowing how good Alexander Gustafsson, it changes the way you view the fight. I always challenge people to watch the Gustafsson John Jones fight again, and then tell me which 3 rounds Alexander Gustafsson won. So that's kind of how I feel like this now. We kind of covered over the X's and O's. Israel Adesanya, let me ask you this. So he's a guy he's very marketable. He knows how to sell fight. He's flashy. He's got the highlight reels. Obviously, this is not the performance you want to sell him on. Does he lose a little stock, though? Like, if we're talking about him, we talk about the pound-for-pound rankings, or whatever you want to say, his marketability or whatever. Like, obviously, the UFC is probably a little disappointed tonight. But overall, I mean, did he turn people away from him a little bit?
I don't think so at all. Like, styles makes fights, and that's what the style of this fight was. I mean, look at George St. Pierre. George St. Pierre blew opponents away, and sure, you could market on dominance, but people were like, oh, we need finishes towards the end, and while George St. Pierre is one of the greatest mixed martial artists, just, just beat up people in every aspect, and you need fights sometimes like that just to show overall the well-roundedness of how great a game is for Israel Adesanya. And like when I was watching this fight, it just really felt like Israel right now is the Michael Jordan of the middleweight division, where we want you to be all offense and you're not defense, and then Jordan 1 year, 1 defensive player of the year. Like, that's pretty much what Adesanya can do. He can mix it up, go into different styles. If you want offense, he can do that. He can bring it to you with the kicks, leg kicks, strike, put you away if you want to engage in that. But Whitaker didn't give him that. He took advantage of what was there.
Yeah.
And, it wasn't, like we said, the most exciting thing. I don't think he lose any steam pay-per-view point-wise. Obviously, the UFC didn't feel like that. They signed him to, now he's the second highest paid guy in the company and sport, mixed martial arts as well. And look, there's other exciting matchups on the line that you may see for Adesanya. So I don't think one fight affects the legacy of what's looking like one of the greatest MMA fighters we have recently come across the pike.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I agree. So anytime I break down Israel Adesanya, I do a preview show, me and Ben Duffy. I think it's the most in-depth preview show there is out there. And one thing I always like to say, there's nobody I like watching film on more than Israel Adesanya. So I feel like I am a little biased towards him because I'm so in awe of what he does. And the route was stay on the outside, kick, jab, kick. Only throw power shots in counters when Whitaker's crashing the pocket with those looping shots, trying to catch that same chef left hook he caught him the first time. And I think you made a great point about George St. Pierre. People forget about some really boring fights George St. Pierre had. I think about Anderson Silva. When people talk about Anderson Silva,
yeah,
it's never the remember when he had that boring fight against Talos Lates? Remember that boring fight against Dimai? It's always, remember when he front kicked Vitor Belfort in the face? Or remember when he did, fill in the blank, went to the Matrix on Forrest Griffin? And I kind of feel like when hindsight comes, when we think about, even the Earl Romero was only 3 or 4 fights ago. We kind of forget that when he starches Paulo Costa in the very next fight. We kind of forget things. And I kind of feel the same way. Let me ask you this. So, not the best win, and I'm not just because, we got to talk about the main event. One question that kept getting brought up about Israel Adesanya is when is he, and it's an easy comparison, obviously the same division, same body structure, same fighting style, but when is he going to surpass Anderson Silva? I'll say this. He's not in Anderson Silva's house. But being 10-0 in the UFC middleweight division, obviously I'm not counting the move up, and having 4 title defenses, I understand Anderson Silva had 10. If you want to count the the Travis Lutter, which was technically a non-title fight, which should have been a title fight, not blaming Anderson Silva, would be 11. He's not in Anderson Silva's house, but he's starting to circle the neighborhood. You know what I mean? You agree with me?
He's definitely knocking on the door of Anderson Silva, right?
Yeah, I agree. So let's matchmake for a second here. It seems like Jared Cannonier, he will get to that fight a little later on, but Jared Cannonier had a beautiful knockout. He made sure Dana White was paying attention to him. I'm getting the title shot. Dana White was giving head nod. I'm sure Dana White's going to probably talking to the media right now, and Ben will give us an update. Is there any other fight to make other than Adesanya and Cannonier, or are you in a different camp?
I think I'm right now in the camp of we have to see the Cannonier and Adesanya fight. Even Adesanya was going for that when he was being interviewed there by Daniel Cormier at the end, saying he's hoping to fight in June. And I think for Cannonier, as we'll get more into that fight as the card progresses here, Cannonier made the statement that he needed to do. You needed to go out on a card like this, a very big middleweight fight in the division, and start your guy that was on a fight with in the division and put him away with a big exclamation point with those big nasty elbows. And I know people are talking maybe Sean Strickland should be in there, but while Sean Strickland looked good in the technical aspect, really shutting down Jack Hermanson last weekend, it wasn't that exciting of a fight, and people always remember your last performance. And I think Cannonier kind of puts himself right now in that spot for the middleweight title. And look, the only guy lost to at 185 is Robert Whitaker.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I love Dev Goes Fishing says he's delivering Anderson Silva's mail. I think he might be stealing some packages from Anderson Silva. So You mentioned Cannonier is it seems like everyone agrees the only other candidate is Sean Strickland. So to me, it's probably just going to come down to timing. It sounds like Adesanya talked about a June return. He kind of threw that name. He said, I don't know if there's a headline for June yet. So it really, I think it's going to be timing. But if it's good timing for Adesanya and Cannonier, that's probably the fight that's going to happen. The harder guy, if you're matchmaking, and Josh, the way we do matchmaking around here is we don't predict what the UFC does. We basically act as we're the ultimate empire. So nobody can say no. No camps, no, I won't fight my teammate. Anything you want, we're in charge. You're running the show. If you're running the UFC and no one can say no, what are you doing, Robert Whittaker?
Oh, man, with Whittaker, maybe you make that fight with Sean Strickland now. If Whittaker would hope to get back in that spot, tough with losing twice to Israel Adesanya, maybe you make the Sean Strickland fight. I think that'd be a fun fight to see. I think we would see a different Sean Strickland who wasn't that proud of his performance. Becker Manson would probably take it up another gear, try to make it that, back and forth rock and roll fight. And Whittaker's coming off a performance where he just falls short of the title. 3 rounds to 2 and 4 rounds to 1 on a judge's scorecards. If he goes out there and has those kind of fights that we saw him in that build-up back, whether it was the Kelvin Gastelum fight or the Darren Till fight, maybe he gets back in there. He seems done good for the UFC, and you know what? If the world is starting to open up, if UFC wants to say to Australia, there's always a headliner there in the middleweight division in Robert Whittaker. So I think that may be the fight you make. For a next step up for Strickland, a guy that's been a champion, fought the best in the world twice. You want to see what he's made of, you give him Robert Whittaker.
Yeah, that's there's a couple other people in the chat. Robbie Shimoda agrees with Strickland versus Whittaker. Mabe tosses out Whittaker versus Costa, which is very intriguing, and mentions that was a fight that we're supposed to get. Mentioned that Costa's not ranked. I understand Costa's fighting a different weight class. I don't know if Costa can even make 185 ever again, so that might not happen. The fight. See, I didn't do Strickland, and the only reason why I didn't write down Strickland is I just think about moving forward. If Adesanya beats Cannonier, and Robert Whittaker would have Robert Whittaker knocks off Strickland, now what do you do for Adesanya? You kind of, because now he's looking for new blood. There's not many out there. I'm trying to keep those guys away from each other. I'm trying to keep guys, to me, who aren't really to me, Robert Whittaker's not in the title picture anymore. Not because until Israel Adesanya is not the champion, he's kind of in that Joseph Benavidez, Demetrius Johnson kind of situation where you've lost twice to the champ. So I want to have guys that Adesanya's faced twice. If they're going to stay in the division and be exciting, put them against each other, and it doesn't affect the title picture. It's just a fun fight. So I'm going Robert Whittaker and Marvin Vettori. I figure it's a fun fight. The one guy wins, puts himself somewhat back in the picture. The one who loses is buried forever. You're not burying another contender. That's the kind of route I'm going. Is there anything else, Jason, you want to talk about before we move on?
No, honestly, it was. I think we've touched on it. It was, not the most exciting performance from Adesanya, but he took what he was given, came through, and cements himself as not only the best weight in MMA, one of the best pound for pound fighters in all mixed martial arts with that performance.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll ask you one more question before we move on. So I'm going to get your grade for the entire night, the entire card, but just give me a grade of the main event. What would you score? And we do letter grade, like you're in school, A, B, C, whatever. What would you give the grade of just the main event?
I'd give it a solid B minus. It was entertaining, and there were moments where you thought maybe we could have a moment and turn the tide. But as well, what is a diehard and just mastery what Adesanya does. As you said, Keith, if Whittaker landing a couple punches, people are it's the round 4 for Whittaker. When it's no, Adesanya more 5 minutes of the fight to win with the leg kicks and overall kicks to the body and just get back up, we can take it down. But anything negative that happens against Adesanya, tenfold more.
Yeah. So I want you as a school teacher because I went much. I gave it a C minus just because the action would probably give it a D, but based on how close it was, I give it a C minus. We got to get into the co-main event, but before we get to the co-main event, anybody who is a frequent listener knows what I have to do before we talk about the actual action. As Bam Bam Tai Tuivasa wins again, so you guys know what I got to do. Hopefully Ben is doing it in Houston with the man himself. I got myself a Sam's Adams porch rocker. But more importantly, I got myself a shoe. I got to do it for the people. Here we go. Jason, if you got one at home, feel free to join me. It's so disgusting, but I got to do it. I don't know if you guys can see. Tell me. Hope you guys can all see.
The shoe is just taking off.
Wow. There you go.
Wow.
That was a good one.
Impressive. Well done.
That's the third time I've done that.
Well done.
That's the third time I've done it. For some reason, that one, it was a little harder than the other two. I don't know. It didn't go down as smooth. I'm getting. You know what? The last two I did when I was 39. I'm now officially 40, so maybe that's why I can't do it. But there you go, guys. I know people would at me if I didn't do it. There's your shoey. Derek Lewis took on Tai Tuivasa. Tai Tuivasa did something that is so incredibly impressive, and that is knock out Derek Lewis cold. You think about the list of guys that Derek Lewis has faced, and yes, he's lost to some really good guys, but to actually get knocked out, if someone told me it was going to be knockout, I would have guessed it was the other way around, being that Derek Lewis, the biggest cracker in the history of the UFC with the most knockouts. No, it was Bam Bam. What a roll this guy is on. Just talk to me for a second about like what this guy's doing.
Man, Tuivasa is just a crazy story. Where just think about like a couple years ago, this guy was 3 in a row. We totally wrote him off.
That's right.
We thought, maybe a fight away from being out of the UFC, looking for another promotion to do some work in. And not only has he turned things around, but he's won 5 fights in a row.
That's right.
And knocked out Derek Lewis. Where as you said, Keith, I don't think many people thought this fight would be. I don't think they thought it would be Derek Lewis being the one knocked out, especially in his hometown. He had much better energy around him, less pressure with it being a title fight like it was the last time when he took on Cyril Gane. But good for Tuivasa. Just like whatever change he's made, it has just worked for him so much. Like as you said, a 5-fight win streak. All of those wins, I believe, have come by way of finish in the first or second round. You want to talk about making a breakthrough statement, like you beat arguably a guy that was probably going to get another potential crack at the can at fighting for a heavyweight title or interim heavyweight title, depending on when Francis Ngannou comes back. And now that's all tied to Tuivasa.
Yeah, it's absolutely incredible. There's so many things to unwrap there. One thing you mentioned is like when he was getting headlocked and thrown around by Sergey Spivak. If you told me that guy was going to come, I mean, I remember when me and Ben were breaking down his fight against Stefan Struve, and we were like laughing. We didn't want to take either guy. To take that guy that was, I think he may have been an underdog, or if not, it was like a pick'em with a pretty much retired Stefan Struve at that time, who was about 95% out the door, and say in just no time at all, he's knocking out Derek Lewis. That's so impressive. But the other thing that might be more impressive, and I believe it was Dev Goes Fishing Again who mentioned this, maybe even more impressive than knocking out Derek Lewis, is to take the shots that he did against Derek Lewis and not get knocked out. Because we know nobody takes those shots from Derek Lewis. He's pinned on the canvas trying to get up. Derek Lewis is dropping these big bombs on his face. Like what a chin we have in Tai Tuivasa. And let me ask you this question. And well, actually, I'll give you a statement. You tell me if you agree with me. So Derek Lewis is a huge star. Going back to the my balls is hot statement, and just really just fun. Everyone loves Derek Lewis, but he's up there in age, which I mean he's not that old for a heavyweight, but heavyweight you could be fighting in your 50s and still be competitive. But Tai Tuivasa is so young. He's also just as marketable. To me, the UFC won tonight with Tai Tuivasa beating Derek Lewis because, one, he's younger, but more important, he hasn't been in those big fights yet. And everything Derek Lewis does, the fun-loving guy, the funny cracks, Tai Tuivasa does all that, and we haven't seen him lose to Cyril Gane, Daniel Cormier, like all the guys that have beaten Derek Lewis over the years. We haven't had Tai Tuivasa is the new fresh blood. So to me, if I'm running the UFC, I'm very happy with Tai Tuivasa winning. Agree or disagree?
I think you're happy with Tai Tuivasa winning because, as I said, he's young. But this whole Shui thing, like you did one, he's now selling this product. Like he's so marketable to a younger generation, the college kid right now, as this fun, loving, exciting heavyweight. Like what heavyweight goes out to Cindy Lauper, like in 2022, who comes out to girls who want to have, kind of gets the stick of being like a fun, hard-hitting, chubby guy. Like he kind of buys into that those are what his fights are going to be. They're going to be short. I'm going to someone quick. I'm going to do a Shui, people, and I'm going to go to the back and say funny things. And I think he's a very marketable guy as well. He's got that rock hard chin, and now it makes heavyweight that much more interesting because if Lewis won, we're probably seeing Cyril Gane at some point later this year, or maybe another interim title, whatever it may be. But now you have Tai Tuivasa. That's fresh meat in a division that always looks for young, fresh, up and coming talent.
Yeah, and as Tuivasa is obviously the guy. He's the president of the Shui. At this point, I've done 3 now. I don't know if there's anybody else out there who, other than the Australians and the New Zealand people. But I don't know. I might be the vice president of the Shui at this point. As I've done 3 now live on broadcast. Yeah. So he's coming in his own. He's coming into his power. He's showing things and. I'm still a little concerned about him, and the concern I have is that wrestling. He, going back to the Spivak fight, Spivak was the last guy who really tried to wrestle him and kind of threw him around. And then tonight, Derek Lewis had success, kind of threw him around a couple times with the wrestling. He got like an inside trip when he went to throw a knee. He also kind of whizzed when Tuivasa had a body lock on him. Lewis kind of whizzed him and whizzed kicked him down. Certain things. That is still concerning. Like, if he fought, say, a Curtis Blades, who's probably still in that same route, I would be extremely concerned to take a guy like Tuivasa in a fight like that.
Yeah, I mean, when Derek Lewis has 2 for 3 on his takedown attempts, when that's not Derek Lewis's game at all, that is a bit of a concern for a Tai Tuivasa. But you know what?
He's All-American,
There's still room to improve on that as he kind of... Yeah, exactly.
Derek Lewis is All-American wrestling. Let's not forget that.
As well. Exactly. But, I mean, there's still room for Tuivasa to improve on that and realize, look, I'm now with the big dog. That's an area I got to improve on because if these heavyweight fights turn into what heavyweight fights that I've been in, they're brawls. No, I have the power. That's probably going to knock out most of these guys. It's just tightening those things up, winning out in those exchanges as well. We also don't really know what his cardio's like as well. This streak has been first round or second rounds. He hasn't pushed third and obviously hasn't fought in a fight that has gone 5 rounds. So that's a little concern as well. But it's heavyweight, so they sometimes tend not to go that way. But I mean, there's still excitement right now with Tuivasa, but there's always room to improve on for Tai Tuivasa going forward. But he's now going to get these bigger matchups and more marquee status for him late this year.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mentioned my bay. Like, obviously, I would favor Curtis Blades based on his wrestling. But, yeah, when you have the power that Tuivasa have, and we've seen Curtis Blades get knocked out, I mean, Tuivasa could easily land one of those shots, similar to Derek Lewis when catching Curtis Blades coming in. Mabe asked, is he really an All-American wrestler? No, that's a Derek Lewis making jokes. I don't think he's ever wrestled in his life before stepping on the cage in MMA. So we're talking about with Tuivasa now that he's really in the mix. Heavyweight division is so messed up. It's being that you have Francis Ngannou beefing with the UFC and contract disputes, and who knows how long he's going to be out. I know Nolan King of MMA Junkie asked this week to Dana White, like, hey, when are you going to talk to him? And it was, kind of give him a, who knows when we're going to talk. Will there be an interim title? Who knows? How's his knee injuries on top of the contract disputes? Who knows? Like, there's a lot of questions about that. You have John Jones. Is he really going to fight again? Is he going to fight a heavyweight? You have former champion Stipe Miocic, who's putting out fires, doesn't seem interested to fight unless it's for a title. The division's so, who knows what could be the next matchup. So, not guessing what the UFC do, but you're in charge. What are you doing with Tai Tuivasa?
I'm Tuivasa. Obviously, as you said, we got to wait what's going on with Francis. And we know he has a knee injury, and plus this whole contract dispute. Maybe you do Cyril Gane. I think that would be a fun fight. It's not what maybe the UFC was thinking that with Derek Lewis, but we did kind of see, and it was such one-way traffic. This is at least a different scenario. If I'm also Tuivasa, maybe not Tuivasa in the UFC ranking jumps from sitting at 11th up to 3 is just beats Derek Lewis. We have Chris Blades fighting next week against Chris Daukaus. So those are two interesting heavyweights as well. That if you need to keep Tuivasa busy, probably give him the winner of Curtis Blades and Daukaus. And that's really Tom Aspinall's in the mix fight in the London card in March. So there are some options down the line if you need to keep Tuivasa busy with some of these top guys in the UFC heavyweight rankings.
Yeah, so hypothetically, if I'm in charge of the UFC and no one can say no, and everyone has to listen to me, and I'm the ultimate ruler, the only reason why we do that because we can't predict the future. Obviously, with the matchup I would want to make is Francis Ngannou defending his title against John Jones. That leaves Stipe Miocic on the outs. Ultimately, if no one can say no, I think Tuivasa has earned the GOAT. The UFC heavyweight GOAT and Stipe Miocic. That's the matchup I would make. Do I expect that to happen? No, I don't expect it. I expect it being one of the matchups you mentioned. Something like Curtis Blades coming off a win, Tom Aspinall coming off a win, something like that. That's what I kind of expect. Maybe a Volkov, somebody, Chris Wiz throws out Rosenstruck. I could see a fight like that. That actually would be kind of fun, stylistic matchup. Two big bangers throwing haymakers at each other. What about Derek Lewis? I mean, we've seen Derek Lewis in top matchups. We've seen the ceiling of Derek Lewis. I think that's fair. I don't think he'll ever win a title. He still has name value, still fun. I'm going to throw it a matchup. But it might not be the sexiest, but there comes a time where a guy keeps winning and you can doubt him. And when I say you, I'm talking about myself. You can doubt him. You can say, yeah, it's not real. It's kind of smoke and mirrors. But eventually, if they keep winning, you have to give them a big shot, a big name. And while I don't believe in the resurgence, Aj Arlovski won again tonight. I think I'd put Lewis versus Arlovski. Give me your thoughts.
Wow, right? Like it does make sense. Arlovski's still victories at his age.
Incredible.
Now 58 professional fights behind him, which is insane, and I'm sure we'll get into that. I don't know as well for Lewis. Lewis is a interesting case because it's a lot of these guys at the top tier of the rankings. If you want to get in, you've already fought, you've already beat them. Like you just ran through Chris Daukaus, who's fighting as well. Like you fought Ivanov. That was a decision victory for you. You just lost to Tai Tuivasa. You got steamrolled by Gunn. Give him Stipe Miocic. Maybe if Stipe Miocic falls out on the outside, if John Jones is ready to come in, and maybe that's something you do. I don't know, but I just know whatever the UFC does, it's going to be in Derek Lewis' best interest, as Derek Lewis is the ultimate company willing to do whatever it takes for the good of the UFC. If they want the less amount of money to fight, he's going to take it just because he's happy for the opportunity. And he's getting up there in age, almost 30, just turning 37 last week. So there's a guy that just keep taking fights, and you know what, UFC is going to use his marketability. And if he's if anything, Lewis a couple guys steps down just so we can get that big Derek Lewis knockout, a highlight type of situation. Maybe that's what Derek Lewis's role is now, like an informal gatekeeper.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. Yeah, Derek Lewis, he's just in a tough situation now that he's losing to a fight like this, and losing twice in 2 of his last 3 fights. He's just in a really, really tough situation. Yeah, let's move on, and don't worry, I'm not going to ask you to match make every single fight on the card. Usually we just do the top ones and the people who really stand out. So don't worry, I'm not going to ask you, what to do next with Blood Diamond. So don't worry. The really intriguing matchup we already talked about him, was Derek Brunson taking on Jared Cannonier. So I had a okay night on my picks. I think I went 9-5. It's not the greatest, but not terrible. But what I always like to tell people is don't brag about your picks if the way you make the pick didn't really fit. If you say, this guy's going to knock him out, and then he wins a wrestle-heavy decision, like, yeah, all right, you got the name of the fighter right, but you didn't pick the fight right. This was one of the fights where I felt like I picked the fight perfect on the preview. As I said, I expect Derek Brunson to come out wrestling, to get takedowns, and then sometime in the second round get clipped with a shot, because Derek Brunson seems to get clipped in every fight, even fights where he's winning way ahead, going back to like Kevin Holland fights. And Jared Cannonier is the biggest hitter since Israel Adesanya that Derek Brunson has faced. And that's exactly how this fight went down. To me, Brunson was brilliant in the first round because he's so, and I thought the commentary team was really good, but Brunson, he gets you guessing. He does, I would say he does everything backwards. He leads with his power punch. Like most guys will set up with a jab. He sets his stuff up with his power punches. He'll throw same side attacks. So he'll throw a high kick on the left side and then follow with a left hook after it. He reaches for takedowns. Everything that doesn't work for other people somehow works for Derek Brunson. Like, I don't know how he does it. And he's doing great. He's getting Cannonier guessing. When he's expecting him to strike, he takes him down. Suddenly, when he's expecting a takedown, he comes over the top of the shot. Everything's working good. And then he comes out in the second round, and the entire, everything falls apart. His body language is different. And the old Derek Brunson shows up, where he's lunging, he's leading with his chin, all the things that we say, oh, God, he looks so bad. What happened to Derek Brunson in this fight besides the knockout? The knockout was the finishing blow, but it was falling apart before that. Tell me what stood out to you.
Yeah, it was like Derek Brunson reverted to Derek Brunson back in 2018, where the blonde had streaked out of his hair and the Superman ass was gone from him. It just wasn't looking the same. But I thought for the key to success for Brunson obviously was the wrestling, and he was having success with that. But it gotta weather the storm of Jared Cannonier in the first round through the second round. That fight, with the third round, Brunson made a chance to get another takedown, maybe work for a submission or just find out a decision. But when you play with the power of a Jared Cannonier who started in the UFC at heavyweight, then went to light heavyweight, now successful at middleweight, with, like we said, the only loss to the guy that fought the title fight, Robert Whittaker. I don't know. It was just one of those things where Brunson hurt Cannonier and tried to, just too little too late, get finished. Finishing sequence, that rear naked choke with 5 seconds left in the first round. He just either got clipped with a punch or was starting to run out of energy. I don't know what it was, but it was just Cannonier laid a big elbow and then a backhand, got the fight to the ground, and it's a devastating hellballs and puts away Brunson in that statement win that you need if you want to fight for a title on against the guy that's pretty much on the same tier as you in the rankings and in the eyes of the UFC thinks. Statement win, and I would expect Cannonier at some point in maybe June, as Adesanya said, to fight Adesanya for that middleweight championship.
Yeah, and guys, I don't know if Jason's really breaking up to me. I don't know if he's breaking up on the broadcast, but he's really breaking up on mine. If it's fine for you guys, I'll roll through it. If not, I'll have him disconnect and call back in. You guys, let me know. So Thing about Cannonier is, I mean, the power that he has. I mean, this isn't one fight. I mean, he put out Brunson, he put out David Branch, he put out Jack Hermanson. I mean, it's on and on now that he's got this power. That said, and we don't do predictions on this show. We usually do our predictions on the previous show, and it's not fair to do predictions without doing proper tape study. But sometimes I'll throw this out here, like when I give my first initial thought. My first initial thought of Jared Cannonier fighting Israel Adesanya for the title, I think Israel Adesanya is a terrible stylistic matchup for Jared Cannonier, and I can't give him anything more than just landing one huge blow and knocking out Adesanya, which we really haven't seen Adesanya hurt. Are you with me with that, or are you giving Cannonier a decent shot against Adesanya?
I give Cannonier a shot because it's an MMA fight and anything can happen. You just got to go with the land who is in that division right now, and Cannonier kind of broke through. The pack right is probably looking like the best guy. We'll see what he can do. He does have a lot of power in his hands, but something Adesanya hasn't fought those guys that have had power before. It's the Paulo Costas that he's fought, or a Robert Whittaker in his own right. Now he's beaten twice, so. I still would pick Adesanya pretty much against anyone in the middleweight division, but it may just be Cannonier's turn to try to take the belt off the style bender.
Yeah, one thing I tweeted out beforehand, and I really thought the UFC dropped the ball, and I talked to, so my normal co-host, Ben, he's from Houston, so he's there in attendance. He's been there all week. He did a fantastic job on the Sherdog YouTube page, getting all the interviews and getting some inside scoops and all this. One thing he said, he felt like this week was really rushed, that they weren't really interested in marketing as much as they've done in the past. And I think a good example of that, I really thought the marketing team dropped the ball, is if this is going to be what most people are saying, number one contender matchup in Brunson versus Cannonier, why not have them at the press conference? Why not get your champion around these guys? Maybe something happens. Maybe Cannonier says, I'm going to knock out Brunson, and Izzy, I'm coming for you. And they get a little dispute, and you get yourself a little promotion for the next one. You could use in the countdown shows and stuff. I really thought that was a missed opportunity.
Yeah, it was bizarre that they weren't, Cannonier and Brunson weren't at the pre-fight press conference on the usual. There's at least 3 fights represented. We only had the 2 main event. And I just thought, especially for how big of a stakes this fight was in the middleweight division, that they weren't there was just odd. And I don't know why that decision was there. Obviously, we knew Lewis would be there. He's the Houston guy and the champions, and Whittaker had to be there. This is just like, these are guys that are potentially going to fight next for the title. Like, why not at the stage? Why are they not marketing themselves? Why are you not marketing that division more? Because right now that division is just one guy. You want to get more fresh faces out in that division and get a new contender, set down the line. You want to be 2 steps ahead in the division. Such a dominant champion.
Yeah, and I agree with what you're saying. And the other thing we didn't think about, and obviously we know now, I mean, the event just ended about an hour ago, is the thing is, you got your number one contender right here. What happens if Robert Whittaker, who has pulled out the day of fights, if you go back to remember the Gastelum fight, something happens, and then all of a sudden you got to throw in Cannonier or throw in Brunson, like, to replace them without even some kind of promotion? I really thought that was a bad mistake, and but I mean, the whole press conference was like 20 minutes long, so it didn't seem like they did a press conference because so guys are saying that your connection is bad. Do me a favor, Jason, maybe this will work out better. Hang up real quick and dial me back in. Is that okay?
I will do that.
All right, and I'll just talk, and if it gets worse, so I'm still talking. Sorry. Let me see. All right, let's see if that works. All right, let's see. All right, he's back. See if that works. If not, what I might do is I'll have you finish up the main card fights for me. Then I'll let you call it an early night, and I'll go solo with the listeners the rest of the way if it doesn't work. Plus, it's getting to the point where you get fights you don't want to talk about too much, anyways. Before that, Renato Moicano versus Alex Hernandez, one of the fights that I was most interested in, and it started off the first round being a really competitive round, and then the second round, Moicano just started putting it on Alex Hernandez, and one of the best performances of Moicano's career. Do you agree?
Yeah, Moicano's a special guy. Like, when you look at what he's done, see, like, guys he's lost to when he was at featherweight are, the greatest featherweight of all time, and Jose Aldo, Brian Ortega, who has eventually went on to fight for the title, and then the Korean Zombie, who's now for a featherweight title. So he moves up to 155, and his only losses to Rafael Fiziev. Like, that's nothing to sneeze at. That's a really talented guy. And you know what? I'd be there with too many good guys, and was able to just pick apart Hernandez, especially that finishing sequence was really beautiful with the beautiful set of punches. Hernandez got hurt and tried to shoot him for the takedown, and then put himself in a worse scenario where Moicano was able to take the back, sink in the choke, and just put away Hernandez with that submission. And so that's a good win for Moicano, especially getting bumped up to the pay. You want to go out there and put on a show and get a finish like that. He does get the finish, and sets himself up at least get another step up in competition in that D50 division.
Yeah, and that's the good thing you mentioned is that it did move up to the prelim. It was something the listeners, Bass was giving it to him, Dev Goes Fishing was giving it to him, that Hernandez was calling for a main card fight, and then perfect combo, club and sub type submission from Moicano. Moicano's a wizard when it hits the ground. It's just so interesting though, getting a good win on a pay-per-view. Instantly when you're on a pay-per-view, especially the main card, you automatically get a little bit more jump, just how it is, a little more eyeballs than normal. And Moicano had this great performance, but that division is so stacked that it's really hard to grasp where he stands, because he did lose to Fiziev. But I agree with you. Like, Fiziev's one of the best guys. Like, some people think he might be the champion one day. So, obviously it was a quick. I think it was like a 1.5 minute knockout, something like that. So, not that well. But that loss has at least aged well, if you know what I mean. Like, it's.
Yeah, it's one of those where you look back, even now, like, it's not a bad loss for a guy that's now getting bumped up in Fiziev to a co-main spot against RDA for the next month's pay-per-view, UFC 272, with obviously Oswald and Covington main eventing. But that's supposed to be a fight night headliner, and they move it to events, shows where they think of Fiziev going forward. So for Moicano, you got to kind of take that as well with a blessing. That's my only loss against the guy that's now in a co-main event spot. I'm doing something.
Yeah, and the funny thing that's about Moicano that stands out to me is he's moved up a division, and he does not look small. He looks massive at lightweight, and the power is coming with him up to that division. It was one of those ones you want to ask the question, like, should he have been there all along? And then when you start thinking about Moicano, some of the guys he's beaten, like, I think about, this guy beat Calvin Kattar. Tell me that win hasn't aged well. Now, obviously, that's maybe 3-4 years ago, but my point is like he's shown that he's been a top 7 or 8 guy in another division. I think I forget. I'm sorry who said it. Somebody else was talking about how Tapper Snap was talking about how loaded the division is. That it'd be really hard to make some noise, but it just continued depth in that division with just great fighters. And Moicano to me was one of the guys who really stood out. I don't know. We'll do one more fight, and then we'll do hopefully I don't know if Ben is still around. If Ben knows what the awards are for the night, we'll go over the awards. But first fight of the night, I just talked about guys having their best performances. This late career surge from Bobby Green. I mean, are you believing it, or are you on the fence a little?
No, I'm totally on this late career surgence of Bobby Green. And I think it was when you looked at kind of how his string went, where he was kind of win a couple, lose a couple. He just wasn't that active as much, and he was one of the guys that really took advantage of the time of being active in the pandemic, where like he's fighting every other weekend on those Apex cards, and you know what, you only get better for being in there. You win or lose, and he's never been finish the pandemic thing. He kept coming off that awesome performance against Aquina, and he just looked so quick. His striking was just way too much for a hack and cruise to a decision. And I think John Anik made the point that he'd like to see Bobby Green at like a fight night, and I'm with him. Like, this is a guy that's been there in the world, fought tons of, isn't afraid of the moment, and such a tough, difficult guy to prepare for with not only what he does his style-wise in the cage, but his antics. He's just tough to fight.
Yeah, Tapper Snaff put something out there. He said that he's having a Masvidal late career resurgence. I don't know if it's on Masvidal level, but I like the comparison because both those guys would lose close decisions, and both those guys were so defensive-minded. What I was so impressed by Bobby Green tonight was it seemed like he finally changed it, where he realized if I win fights, I have to have more offense. My offense matters even more than my defense. And we saw him really letting his hands go, fast shots coming right down the middle, good output, which is never the case with Bobby Green. That's usually the thing. Oh, his lack of he's rolling. He thinks he's winning because he's making people miss. Today it was offense. And to me, Haqparast had a terrible strategy. He never changed anything up. You have to beat Bobby Green. You got to be in his face. You got to make a dogfight. You got to go to the body. You got to go to the kicks. You got to add in some wrestling. You can't stand in that he wasn't in the pot. He was in that mid range with a high guard and just be a punching bag without any moving. I thought it was a terrible strategy. He was just. And Bobby Green is too good defensively. Like, I know I was just talking about his offense, but too good defensively that if you're just going to stand in this high guard and then try to answer with power shots, he moves, he deflects so well. He has that like a MMA's like a modified like Philly shell towards MMA. Just really, really good performance. I understand where Anik. I don't know if I'm giving him a fight night main event. But I was thinking about this, like Moicano and Bobby Green are kind of both in that same, and this is the reason why I didn't matchmake for a second, but they're both in that range where maybe not top 15 guys, but they're just right behind it. I like that matchup. Put those two guys against each other. They're in the same turnarounds, they both fought tonight.
That'd be a fun one. Same turnaround schedule, especially the same, guys have good performance. Moicano with a finish, and Bobby Green's just so tough, so that makes it an interesting stylistic match as well. I don't know. I think Bobby Green's going to find his way cracking inside close to 15 if he doesn't make it in there after this weekend's card. But I don't know. There's so many intriguing matchups for Bobby Green. And Bobby Green's also one of those guys, if someone per se, upper echelon of the 155 division gets hurt, you can just plug Bobby Green in there because he's proven he's reliable, healthy, and he's going to put on an entertaining fight whether he wins or loses.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we saw what he did he did lose, but to have a competitive matchup, highly competitive matchup with Rafael Fiziev, that tells you the level this guy is. When he's on his game, he's a tough matchup for anybody. And this Bobby Green, the one who showed up tonight, is a really tough matchup moving forward. I really hope we get more of this Bobby Green going forward. I hope he doesn't take a step back. He was always, as Ben would say, he's one of these yell at TV guys because you see the potential there more than he actually shows up. Bobby Green is a guy that I don't know, something about it. Like, seems like in the Houston crowd was getting into the Bobby Green. It seems like everybody's cheering for this new Bobby Green.
It's just Bobby Green just comes across the real guy. Like, whatever he says, you can tell it's not for show. Something he truly believes. It's that Diaz energy that comes out of him where people know he's not a phony. He's not a character like a Colby Covington. That's just himself. And he's also been a guy that's been around this sport for a very long time. Like, I remember Bobby Green from Affliction 2, taking lows on, fighting in Strikeforce, getting away to the UFC and just being in, competitive, exciting fights. You win something with the Dr. fans, and eventually that translates to the pay-per-view audience, the casual and more so. And he's always the perfect guy as well to kick off a pay-per-view card like he was here.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right, Jason, I'm gonna let you get out of here. I kept you already an hour now. The connections get a little bad, but honestly, guys, I don't do the it's on my side. I don't do the techie stuff. Ben does. The program I use, it's really good for recording interviews. It's some reason it's not that good for going live, and it seems as something we're getting more and more worse connections, but Jason's great. Make sure, Jason, tell everyone real quick if they don't know you how to follow you on social media. His stuff is really good. I almost agree with 99% of the stuff he posts. We're talking throughout every fight night. He's very active on fight nights and throughout the week. Tell people where they can find you.
If you want to follow me on Twitter, it's the letter J and my last name Hagholm, Hagholm, and the number 1 at the end. On Instagram, it's just J Hagholm. I'll definitely have a lot of interviews coming up this week for some fights on the Titan FC card regional show that now just got pushed back a couple of weeks at the beginning of March, and some fights for some of the guys on the Canadian scene. I got Ryan Ford coming up, fighting on the unified card on Fight Pass at the beginning of March, and Kyron Cameron, who's fighting for the in lightweight FL championship. Look at that coming up to all my social media.
Yeah, and Jason, just so you know, I know you can't see the comments that like I can, but all the people in the chat are saying wonderful things about you. So you made some fans tonight.
Oh, that's always, especially with the Sherdog audience.
Yeah, again, it's not his internet, guys. It's my program. Our contract with the program I'm using is running out soon, so we're not going to use it. It works really good for interviews again, but this is, I don't know if people have seen the way we've kind of changed the way we do the recaps. That's because when Ben's behind the helm, we use his program instead. So, anyways, Jason, thanks so much again, and we'll do it again soon.
Yeah, for sure. Have fun, Keith.
All right, see you, Brian. All right, I'm gonna let him.
See ya.
All right. Gotta fix this screen for a second, guys. There we go. So, yeah, guys, we thank him so much. He's a really good follow. Make sure to check it out. He did mention about a guy who's been around forever. Well, the guy we had who was running around forever, Andre Arlovski. Let's talk about this for a second. We had a split decision. Andre Arlovski beating Jared Vanderaa. I know Bass was talking about Vanderaa being I don't know the exact word he said, but pretty much a bum. Andre Arlovski's on a roll of beating these bums now. I think it's 3 in a row. I think it's 5 out of 6. Andre Arlovski has this unbelievable ability to really slow down the fight. Daniel Cormier talked about that on the broadcast, and have guys fight the way he is. He was just too fast. Vanderaa did not throw enough, and there was a big difference in athleticism. Now, one of the judges gave the fight to Vanderaa, so I want to ask people out there, like, how did you score the fight? Did you score for Arlovski? Did you score for Vanderaa? I saw MMA decisions. It was 17 out of 17 for Arlovski. I actually was doing some things, so I actually didn't even hear the split decision. I watched the fight, and then I was setting things up and moving things around, so I just assumed Arlovski won. I know it was the same judge, and not a good decision by him. You know what not a good decision is doing a shoey when you're about to do a live show, because I've had to pee for like an hour straight, but I'm gonna truck through it. But I'm hurting over here. Bass mentioned Arlovski has 0 punching power left. That's true. I mean, I think we talked about it's been Travis Brown. It was like 7 or 8 years ago when he last got a knockout. Bass scored it for Arlovski, so did Tapper Snap. Dev Goes Fishing went with Arlovski by decision. He actually won some money on it, so good for him. Donkey mentions that there's no accountability for judges. Yeah, I and this is not the show for this, but there's the other shows. But that's a really good point by Donkey. I don't know what the solution is. Like we've been calling for more accountability of referees, especially more accountability of judges. I don't know what is the accountability. One thing I do want to mention, and I'm not. Listen, before I say this, I am not saying that this guy's decision was the right thing. So take this what it is. But one thing you have to remember is, and I've actually judged, but a lot of people don't know this. I used to be a judge before MMA was sanctioned in Massachusetts. I did a couple fights, a couple events. One thing you got to remember is they don't have replays. They don't have every camera angle. You get one view looking through a cage I'm not sure. I think the UFC, I think they might have a some kind of, they might or may not, I'm not sure. But when I was judging, you had one view. So things are different from other angles. That said, I'm not, this one was pretty bad. The next fight was even worse. But the thing about Arlovski, I mean, is anybody believing in this resurgence? I'm not. I just feel the same way Bass was, that he's beating bums. But at one point, when you keep beating bums, you have to give him a step up in competition. And that's why I was putting him against Derek Lewis. Because you know what? Tai Tuivasa had a huge win tonight. And not that long ago, I'd been like, yeah, Tai Tuivasa is winning, but he's beating bums. He beat Stefan Struve. He beat Greg Hardy. I shouldn't call these guys bum, but you know what I mean. They're lower level. They're not world beaters, I should say. Donkey, he said, there are so many different solutions that I can think of. It would take a while. So honestly, I'm interested, Donkey. I don't know if you have my Twitter handle, but send me a message on Twitter, because I'm not trying to call you out. I'm just interested in what you think, because I'd like to know what people think, how we can change judges. Like I said, this is not the show for that, but hit me up on Twitter. Let me know what we can discuss on Twitter, and maybe we'll get more people discussing, and maybe we can come up with an idea. And maybe, who knows, maybe we'll be the pack that presses it, and we'll be the I don't know, MMA's version of the Canadian truckers or something, and we'll change the world, starting with MMA judging. So at me, Keith Schillen MMA. I'll spell my name. It's KeithShillan MMA. Hit me up on Twitter. Let's discuss it. Like, I'm really intrigued at what people think would be the best way to change judging, more than just calling them out on UFC broadcasts. There needs to be some change. Especially the perfect example is the Roxanne Modafferi versus Casey O'Neill fight. To me, it was a clear 30-27. Casey O'Neill, they said that she set the record for most significant strikes in a 3-round fight. I don't know if they were saying that's the entire record of any weight class, any gender, or if it was just specifically female, was specifically female in her weight class. I don't know. But either way, her output was extremely impressive. Her accuracy was extremely impressive. She was landing, she butchered Roxanne Modafferi's face. And to me, the Casey O'Neill-Roxanne Modafferi fight really summed up Roxanne Modafferi's career. And I mean this in not an insulting way. I mean this is almost in a compliment. It was Roxanne Modafferi constantly getting matched up with people with higher ceilings, more. Okay, so Robbie Shimada is saying that was the flyweight women's record. Okay, so I didn't think it was one record, because it was big output. I didn't think it was that big, but I'll take Robbie's word that was the flyweight women's record. So it just summed up in the sense that Roxanne Modafferi was never a great athlete. It seemed like everybody she fought had a higher ceiling. But despite not being a great athlete, going against a fighter like Casey O'Neill, who's young, who's really good, really promising, one of the best fighters in the division, is that she put herself in a position, despite being outmatched, to win a scorecard. And I think it was a terrible score. But the fact that she's pressing a pace, that she's staying at her face, she's throwing, keeping the output, just sums up the kind of fighter Roxanne Modafferi is, in the fact that she's a tough SOB. And Casey O'Neill said, it got some heat, or some of it was playful trash talk. We're saying your best compliment shouldn't be how tough you are. You know what? I wonder if Casey O'Neill would change her opinion. Like, yeah, she won, and she won impressively, but there is something about just being insanely tough. That Darren Elkins, always moving forward, never stopping, finding every ounce of energy, every ounce of ability you have, and putting it together. That's what Roxanne Modafferi. So that's kind of my tribute to Roxanne Modafferi. I believe it was Tapper Snap that said he had his own little tribute he'd want to say. If he has it, I'll read it here, or he can post in the chat. As long as it's not super long. If you're in love with Roxanne Modafferi, she had a good career. will she be remembered 50 years from now? Probably not. Will she be talked about 50 years from now? But the ones of us who are hardcore, we've been around, good for her. She had a great career. I hope she has a wonderful life. I hope she blossoms in her personal life and enjoys much needed time with friends and family. So Tapper Snap says, I can say so much more to MMA than just a fighter. I knew Roxy in Japan, and she went out of her way to help out a lot of foreign fighters. She reported, did translations, let people crash, and made sure that we didn't get stiffed. She's a gem. She's a gem man. Okay. She's a gem man, saying to me, man, I'm not, she's a gem man. I don't know Roxanne Modafferi. Obviously, you do. I don't know her like that, but she definitely seems like a wonderful person from just her reputation, interviews, way she carries herself. She might not win in MMA, but she seems like she's winning in life. Just like really good people. I'm interested in what the UFC will do with Casey O'Neill moving forward. I'm interested in what you guys think. Really good prospect. She's now 4-0. I think it's time for her to get a name. I'm not saying that she needs to get. Roxanne Modafferi is a big name, but I think like someone like Cynthia Calvillo is someone who has main event UFC before, had a little buzz herself, kind of used as a test. I think that's a test that Casey O'Neill would pass. I think she'd pass fairly handily, but just a continued name that she could build off of. I like Casey O'Neill. I also like this bad girl. Like I like that when she got booed, she was calling out the crowd. She did like her Al Iaquinta, like "Don't boo me, F you." There really isn't a bad girl in the UFC right now that people generally love to hate. I think the last female fighter that people love to hate, Jermaine Duronami had that for a little bit when the whole not fighting Chris Cyborg, landed punches after the bell, but she didn't have the personality to continue that. I mean, she's actually a very nice, seems like a very nice person. Maybe Ronda Rousey, and fearless Ronda Rousey was loved to hate near the end of her career, not during like her rise, but the Amanda Nunes and all that stuff. Before that, Kyler Phillips versus Marcelo Rojo. Kyler Phillips put on an absolute clinic. Flawless victory. Just speed, power, athleticism, the way he timed takedowns, the mounted triangle with the armbar. This was a mismatch. He was the biggest favorite on paper, and he showed why. Just absolute flawless. I'm trying to speed up a little bit. I got to pee so bad. That Shiwi was fun, but now I'm hurting. Before that, Fabio Charant took on Carlos Elbert. Fabio Charant is one of the most disgusting performances in recent memory. Like his own team, really threw him in the bus. At one point, they were caught on camera saying to Elbert they apologized for him just not showing up. Elbert just really controlled his output. He very similar to the main event. He just took what Charant gave him, sat back, picked him out from distance. He looked like a guy that was warming up, getting ready to fight. All right, moving around, I'm getting ready for war, and then it just never happened because Charant never pulled the trigger, and Elbert just played it safe. And I get that. I mean, Elbert kind of gassed out his last fight, got knocked out because of it. Charant did nothing, and to me, besides being one of the worst performances, it's one of the worst runs in UFC history. I mean, you think about his first fight, he gets, I think he was Von Flue choked quickly. His next fight, he was knocked out cold by William Knight, and then he does nothing to, he wasn't throwing punches. And the funny thing is, in the first round, when he did throw punches, he actually had success. I put more effort in covering this fight than he did in the fight. Just a terrible performance. And listen, he's from my area. He's from Southern New England. I want a guy like this guy to be successful. Just really, really bad. Tapper Snap talked about his fight IQ being terrible. Yeah, it's terrible. Ezekiel King says one of the worst fights he's ever seen. Yeah, I agree. Before that, we had a fantastic fight in Ronnie Lawrence versus Mano Martinez. That was a fight that I think a lot of people were excited heading into it. Two really good prospects. Ronnie Lawrence showed that I think he's special. I don't know if he'll be a top 15 fighter in the division, but he has that feel to him. I know he's been out for a while. So it's kind of, what have you done lately? Out of sight, out of mind. But what we've seen is fast, powerful, athletic. He mixes up his striking with his wrestling so well together. He looked really good. Yeah, he got caught and almost got knocked out. And maybe Martinez could have let his hands go a little bit sooner and maybe would have found a finish. But to me, overall, I'm not going to let that cloud a really wonderful performance from Ronnie Lawrence, especially considering he went on record saying that he had diarrhea, which one is embarrassing to say. But if he was really sick like that and still put on a performance like that against a quality fighter in Mano Martinez, I like Lawrence. Like, he was a guy I already liked before, but what a brilliant performance. So talk about good performances. Jacob Malkoun versus Aj Dobson. Now, it's not the most exciting matchup, but Dobson looked like he was great. Came out great, was landing shots. But Malkoun had a strategy. He thought he was the better grappler, and he clearly was. He didn't get frustrated when he couldn't get the takedowns. He got the takedowns. He was relentless to get the takedowns. And once he started getting the takedowns, besides getting the takedowns, I felt like he mentally broke Aj Dobson, and he was starting to fold as Dobson. I had it 29-26. That's how I scored. Like, I gave him 10-8 rounds in the second and the third. It was that dominant for Jacob Malkoun. That's back-to-back wins for Jacob Malkoun, for a guy that looked terrible in his UFC debut, a guy that had the reputation that he only got in the UFC based on being Robert Whittaker's friend. He's shown that's not true with two good wins in a row. Speaking of really good, fun fights, Douglas Silva de Andrade made a historic comeback when he submitted Sergey Murzov. What a wild fight. Murzov, I mean, he looked amazing to start. He was so crisp, landing shots, hurting, busted Douglas Silva de Andrade up. God, his eye was cut open, bloody mess. But Douglas Silva Andrade showed how dangerous he is with that power in that division. He dug deep. He started landing some shots, hurt Murzov, and then found the submission. Just really, really fun. I mean, if you were grading just this fight, you'd have to give it an A. Excuse me, sorry about that. Tap a Snap talking about Mark Coleman raging in the corner. Yeah, you'd think a guy who's cornered by a former Olympian and NCAA national champion wrestler would be a little bit better in his takedown defense. That was not the case. Speaking of rough takedown defense, Blood Diamond, was it Mike Mathetha? I think is how you say his name. I actually forgot it now because it just goes by Blood Diamond. Took on Jeremiah Wells, and I just want to stress this. One, Renzo Gracie Philly is a team that I've been backing for a while, and I know it's Renzo Gracie ran by Daniel Gracie. It could be Daniel Gracie Academy or Renzo Gracie Philly, whatever you want to call it. Jeremiah Wells showed that just because there are decorated kickboxers like Israel Adesanya who just evolve, they transfer to MMA and they do so well. That's not the case with all of them. There is you have to really show strong takedown defense, ability to understand grappling. There was things I liked that Blood Diamond did, but ultimately he's too inexperienced. Kind of got rushed based on who he is, what the camp he is, who he, same camp, same physique, same background as Israel Adesanya. They were hoping to kind of get a second one. I'm not saying he won't be that, but he looks like a guy that probably should be on the regional scene instead of fighting in the UFC. Jeremiah Wells is a seasoned veteran. I think it's safe to say that when we Google Blood Diamond, it's not going to come up Mike Mathetha. It's still going to come up the movie as the first Google search. And the first fight of the night, William Knight versus Maxim Grishin. Just a terrible weekend for William Knight. I mean, this guy set the all-time record for biggest weight miss of all time, missing by 12 pounds. He He lost 40% of his purse, and then he got dominated fight. And he was another guy. He really failed to pull the trigger. I hated his fight IQ. I mean, he was standing on the outside, getting picked apart from the outside, and didn't even try to get inside. And then obviously you could tell by, some people saying, oh, he missed weight and he just moved to heavyweight. I mean, you saw the size difference he was giving up to a guy like Grisham. He's not made for heavyweight. He's got to get that weight issue under control. I know he took the fight on short notice, but sometimes we give passes to guys who miss weight, but not by 12 pounds. Not a good showing by William Knight. So I don't know if anybody has the awards. If you know the awards, I will give you. Well, let's do this. Let's give what we would give for the awards. If anybody has the official awards tonight and they want to read them out there, we won't do like the guessing game like we normally do. I'll just say who I would have give the awards to. Being that I'll give like one fight of the night and two performance bonuses. I would give my fight of the night to. I'd probably do the crazy back and forth fight between. I almost went Derek Lewis and Tai Tuivasa, but I'm going to go with go on the prelims. I'm going to go with Morozov and D'Andrade. I mean, that was a crazy back and forth. Both guys hurt. Both guys bloodied up. And as far as performances, you knock out Derek Lewis in his hometown. To me, you got to get a performance bonus. I would give it to Tai Tuivasa. And as far as the other one, there's like a lot of guys in the running for the other one. Cannonier, Moicano, Green had a really good performance. Casey O'Neill had a really good performance. But as far as the last one, I'm actually going to give it to Cannonier too. I mean, you knock out Derek Brunson. That's a really good win. I'm going to read out what people are saying. Tapper Snap is giving out his words. I don't know if he's saying this is who won or if this is what he would pick. He was going with D'Andrade and Morozov for fight of the night, performance bonuses, Tuivasa and Cannonier, so the same ones I had. Chris Wiz goes Ty and Cannonier, performance, Andrade and Morozov. So I don't know if he's saying guys, just let me know if that's the actual official or if that's what you're saying. Chris Wiz going the same one. So if that's who won, then actually UFC did a fantastic job as I picked. So Tap is saying that's his award. But if you are going to say what your award, just let me know, and then if anybody knows the official award, we'll throw it. Let's see if I can look it up on the fly. Ezekiel mentions Kyler Phillips saying that. Ezekiel King. I mean, Kyler Phillips really. He's the biggest favorite, so it's hard to give him the performance bonus. But yeah, he really had an incredible night. I'm huge on Kyler Phillips. Devo goes Mano and Lawrence for the bonus. That's another good one. Tai Tuivasa, De Silva, Andrade, and Cannonier. He gave an extra one. Chris Wiz gave the actual winners. Okay, so that's good. So I'm going to go back to double check with Chris. So Chris went with Tai, Cannonier, Andrade, and Morozov. So exactly the ones I went with were the ones that actually won. So good in the UFC. I picked the ones that I thought should have won. Anybody else want to throw out their performance bonus winners, I'll toss it out there. In the meantime, let's get to the fun stuff. The Bulls and the Bears and the cut list. I'm going to start with the cut list. I only had one name for the cut list, and that's Fabio Charant. I mean, I think that's a no-brainer. He has to be cut after this performance. He's not UFC level. If you looked on the preview show where, I'm not going to go back that far, but just Fabio Charant 0-3 in the UFC. Let's do the Bears. So the Bulls and Bears, guys. If you're unfamiliar with it, the Bulls and the Bears is a stock market reference. When things are going good, it's a bull stock. When things are going bad, it's a bear stock. Tapper Snap throws Knight out there. The only reason why I'm not cutting Knight is that it was short notice, and he did win his previous fight right before that. So that's why I didn't cut Knight. But I'm okay if they do, based on that weight cut issue. So when we do a 3-2-1 style, like kind of like hockey stars and I, like 3 being 3-2, and then 1 be the biggest one. You want to be the biggest bear. You don't want. You want to be the biggest bull. You don't want to be the biggest bear. If anybody listening want to throw out their bulls and the bears, I will read theirs. I'll start with mine. I'm going to start with the Bears. So these are the ones who had a bad night. My number 3, and there's a lot. I actually had a big list, but getting it down to my 3, I'm going to go with MMA judge Robert Alexander. When you get called out on the broadcast as a judge, it's usually not a good thing. They usually don't call out and say, hey, what a wonderful job Adelaide Bird did. It's usually them calling that person out. Robert Alexander had very controversial scorecards in the Roxanne Modafferi versus Casey O'Neill fight and the Aj Dobson versus Jared Vanderay. He's the only one who gave the losing fighter a scorecard. My number 2, I'm going to say my number 2 is both Ben's region and my region of MMA, as my New England boys went 0-2 with William Knight missing weight, and then Fabio Charant and William both having a difficulty of pulling the trigger. My region went bad, but Houston fighters also did bad, as both Mano Martinez and Derek Lewis lost. If you want to add just Texas in general, they went 0-3, as Alex Hernandez also lost. So not a good night for Texas and New England MMA. But my number 1, it's to me, and I know a lot of people thought this guy won, and I didn't, but I trust the judgment of our listeners. They're obviously extremely intelligent, hardcore MMA geniuses. A lot of our listeners went with Robert Whittaker, but to me, he's still the ultimate bear, because now he's 0-2 against Israel Adesanya. I forgot who said it, but someone said he's in the John Fitch territory, the Joseph Benavidez, that one where you're 0-2 against a champion. I know John Fitch wasn't 0-2 against George St. Pierre, but he was just that he lost the champion and then not going to get the title shot back. I feel like that's what Robert Whittaker is now. At this point, he's only really like a liability in the division, where he's going to take out other contenders. And really, I mean, the road back to a title shot for Robert Whittaker is really long, even though this was a close fight. So no, let's get to the Bulls, guys. This is the Tap Snap also throws the hometown fighters on the Bears. Not a good night for them. He threw Knight on the Bears, and I missed one of his. If he threw another one, I apologize. And as far as the Bulls, these ones had a good night. I'm going to start with Aj Dobson. I mean, Aj Dobson's stock still rises. I mean, he's won 5 of his last 6 fights. He's like 43 years old. He started fighting MMA when Bill Clinton was the president. I mean, we've had, 2 terms from George Bush, 2 terms for Barack Obama, a term from Donald Trump, and now a term from Joe Biden. I mean, he's been fighting forever. And, so Aj Dobson continues to get it done. So Dev goes, Rob is in the Colby Covington territory. The problem with I actually disagree with that, because Colby Covington is still getting himself main events because he can talk himself into big ones. Rob Wood can't even talk himself into big fights. Like, Colby Covington and Jorge Masvidal, that's a fun grudge match. But after the winner's still not in a situation to challenge for the title. But to be able to talk themselves into a main event, that's why Robert Whittaker's not in that situation. Number 2, going back to the Bulls. My number 2 for Bulls is promos. I'm gonna say the mic was hot tonight. Tai Tuivasa had a fun moment in the mic. Cannonier getting the attention of Dana White. Moicano doing the "I want big money, give me money." That was a lot of fun. Bobby Green getting all deep, saying, "Hey, someone screwed you over. Fuck him." He said. Casey O'Neill telling the crowd to fuck off. Roddy Lawrence talking about having diarrhea. That's a really fun post-fight interviews. I think that was really fun. So not often we do that, but the post-fight interviews, in cage interviews, was really good. And my number one is Tai Tuivasa. You knock out Derek Lewis, continued run, 5 wins in a row, 5 knockouts, probably putting himself in the top 5 in the heavyweight division. He was a guy that at this point, you go back a couple of years ago, I thought he'd be out of the UFC. And now he's winning. I'll read some other guys. Tapersnap has Tuivasa number 1, Bobby Green number 2, and Hallberg's eyebrows number 3. Devo goes De Silva Andrade, Bobby Green, Tai Tuivasa. Chris goes Tai Tuivasa, Bobby Green, and Cannonier. Obviously, Cannonier is one that's up there. Dana White did a shoey. So I'm no longer the vice president of the shoey because obviously Dana White knocks me out of that. So, yeah, I'm sure the Dana White shoey would get a lot more views than my shoey. But you know what? I hope I did it better than Dana. I didn't drop a single drop on myself. I think that's 3 times in a row I didn't get a single drop myself. I don't know if maybe you're supposed to, right? Tuivasa pours himself. All right, guys, let's Ty is Mark 2.0. He definitely has a Mark Hunt feel to him. Devo mentioned that this is a good point that he knocked out Lewis in Lewis's hometown, and the fans still cheered for Tuivasa. Yeah, Tapersnap throws Joe. We're not touching Joe Rogan situation. not now. We've had too much fun to cover Joe Rogan right now, but he throws Joe Rogan as a bear. Okay, fair enough. So you guys have it. Let's get to let's go to the grades. The grades of the evening. I'm gonna go B-. To me, before the main event, like this was cruising to an A. The main event, yes, it was competitive, so it didn't pull it too down, but it lackluster main event gives it a B-. You guys give me your grades for the card. Let's see. Tap says B. Anybody else throw out their grades? I'll read on there. I apologize. Sorry, B-. I apologize. I know I've sped up the end of this. I really got to pee, guys. I shouldn't have done that shoot. I don't know, something in this porch rocker. I don't know. I was drinking too much water lately or something. So let's go with you know what? I'll give my listener. I'm gonna go with Tapersnap. He just came with the volume. Came with some really good content. Dev was great. Chris Wiz was great. Bass is great. Actually, you know what? I would give it to Tapersnap. But you know what? Ben was in the comments briefly while actually at the press conference. So let's give Ben. To be that committed to the show, even when you're covering the UFC, to at least get in and make some comments. Ben wins, but. Really, Tapersnap wins tonight. Dev goes A- for the. Wow, he says other than the main event, it was a really good card. Dev goes A-. Chris Wiz goes A-. So yeah, there. Tapersnap agrees with me. Chris Wiz and Dev thinks much higher of the card. Real quick, last question, and if you're in Europe, I apologize. Tell me who you think's gonna win. Tell me 2 questions. Who you think is going to win the Super Bowl and who you want to win the Super Bowl. I don't have a dog in the fight as my hometown team, New England Patriots, not in it. My adopted hometown team, the Tampa Bay Bucks, because, of course, Tom Brady connection. They're not in it either, so I don't really have a dog in the fight. I think the Rams are going to win, though I am rooting for the Bengals because how can you not root for the Bengals? It's, one of the worst teams in history is now suddenly in this. I mean, 2 years ago they had 2 wins. They were the worst team in the NFL. Just a really fun story if they win the Super Bowl. So that's what I have. Plus, Mike Sloan is a Sherdog writer. He's a big Bengals fan. Kyle Steele, one of the guys who really helped me get started in doing the podcast and stuff. He's a Bengals fan. Really good friend of mine, one of my closest friends, Kyle Steele. If you don't know him, started Loudmouth MMA. Really, really great dude. But yeah, real quick, if you guys have any, you want to throw predictions out. Dev is fine. All right, Dev gives me permission to take a piss. So you guys, I got the Rams winning, but I hope the Bengals win. Dev's going fishing. Guys, a couple things. One, we'll be back recapping next week's card. Obviously, there is a preview. Me and Ben actually have already taped it. That's for the sudden change in the Johnny Walker versus Jamal Hill fight. That card, that'll be out early Monday morning. As far as the recap, Ben will be rolling solo. I don't know if he's going to get a partner. Me and Ben have not broken up or anything. It's just the team. I broke up the team, guys. Bear with me. Just he was in Houston this week. I'm going to be at Bellator next week. So that's why. But after that, we'll be back to the same routine. We'll have the previews and all the other good stuff on Sherdog. Make sure you guys like this video. Continue to comment like you guys did. Share. Subscribe, check out other videos. It really helps us continue to grow this. I appreciate all the listeners who just was civil with each other, really had fun. And guys, thank you so much. Hope you enjoyed the fight. See you next time, guys.